Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Do we really bother about British politics? I know that at this point British politics is a lot of fun, but any given point of time, Indian politics will be more exciting and more fun. So we don't watch British politics for entertainment. We've got our own. But we watch British politics, and I talk about it for two reasons. One, for what it tells us about how a parliament asserts itself as an institution. We know that in democracies there is the executive, there is the parliament, there is the judiciary. But very often you find that once you have a majority and form a government, then government leads the parliament. Judiciary is able to stop the executive once in a while when the judiciary holds something unconstitutional, but not parliament. Parliament usually goes along with the executive. So something unusual has happened in Britain, whereby lessons lie for India. Second, this is also an excuse for us to try and understand the whole Brexit business a little bit. Let me warn you, I'm not an expert on this. In fact, it confuses me and beats me most of the time. So this has made me read up on it and try and understand at least the basics of what is Brexit, what is no deal Brexit, what is the fight about. And third thing, what does this tell us about anti-defection law? Because those are lessons that apply very strongly to Indian Parliament and Indian parliamentary practice and Indian politics and Indian governance. So what is it that's happened over the past week or so in Britain? What's happened is that the Britain's new Prime Minister who's just been in power for a little over a month, Boris Johnson, he has driven he's a great populist in the same category as Donald Trump, Erdogan, I would say Narendra Modi. He's a great populist. He's also somebody who takes on his own party all the time. So he has now gone ahead and said that I am getting out of Europe on October 31. That was the last deadline that Theresa May, his predecessor, had negotiated with the Europeans. But before that, UK government had to have a deal with Brexit. Now, what is the deal? The deal is, and I read this in the British press, beautifully explained by a commentator in an analogy, who said it's a bit like all of you are flying on a plane, things are going all right, everything else is okay with the flight, maybe the food's bad or maybe the temperature is not very good. And at some point you decide that let's hold a vote on whether we continue flying on this plane or get out. And the majority votes that we should get out. Now you can't decide that if you are getting out, where will the plane land? How will the plane land? How will you get out of the plane? Then you say, let's hold another vote, let's hold another vote. And this goes on in confusion while the pilot is flying round and round. As that happens, the plane is running out of fuel. Then you are left no choice because you have nowhere to land. So your only option is to open the doors and jump. Now the question comes, do you jump with a parachute or without a parachute? So that parachute is the deal. And there was an interesting, almost unprintable exchange between Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party and the opposition, the most powerful opposition leader in the House of Commons, over parachute or no parachute. Having said that, what is the parachute? The parachute or the deal is something that allows Great Britain to continue in the European Customs Union for some more time. What does it mean? That means the free movement of goods and services across these borders continues uninterrupted. Why that is important? That is important because of Ireland, and that's why one term you will hear very often is Irish backstop, and that will confuse you. So let me again try to, I'm decluttering it, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but let me over-declutter it. What that means is that Great Britain also includes Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland also has borders with Ireland, the Irish Republic. That border is open, that is not a hard border. Ireland is not leaving EU. So if Ireland does not leave EU and Northern Ireland has open borders with Ireland and Northern Ireland is a part of Britain, then how do you make adjustments? So there had to be a deal whereby this customs union will continue, so goods could keep moving as if the entire border was the British border. Now you could, Boris Johnson is now offering an alternative where he says that he will leave an Irish backstop, which means the Irish will be excluded from this aspect of Brexit right now. But once again, there are lots of MPs in Britain who don't like the idea that one of the units of the United Kingdom would have a different system, because then you come into what the Chinese might call for Hong Kong one country, two systems, or what in our own country we used to call Article 370 for Kashmir. No country likes its different units or different regions to have different dispensations. So that is the big dog's breakfast. In all this, because Johnson is such a populist, he said it doesn't matter, I am going ahead October 31, whether I get a deal or not with EU, I am getting out of it. The opposition, the Labour, opposed it, and many members in his own party also opposed it, because remember, from the very beginning, Conservative Party has been divided on Brexit. David Cameron, for example, who ordered the referendum, he had hoped the referendum will fail. In fact, he had issued appeals to vote for remaining in EU. He had also requested Narendra Modi to issue that appeal, and Narendra Modi had also issued an appeal to people of Indian origin to vote to remain in Europe. So Conservative Party is divided. When that didn't work out, because Boris Johnson is a populist and he has great support on the street in his own base, every leader now works for his base. He then said, all right, you are not letting me do it, I will hold a fresh election. So he moved, first of all, he moved a bunch of resolutions in his House of Commons asking for a no-deal Brexit, but he was barred. He was barred by a strong majority from doing so. And that happened because 21 members of his own party voted against his resolution. Now that resolution, barring him from going for a no-deal Brexit, was passed by House of Commons. It's also been signed by the Queen. So it's the law. So unless he breaks the law, he cannot go for a no-deal Brexit. In fact, he's now talking about either challenging it in the court, a bit like India, but in this case, it will be the Prime Minister of the country or the government of the country challenging a law passed by his own parliament. Usually the opposition or activists or others challenge these laws, but this will be an incredible situation where the government challenges a law passed by its own parliament. And thereby lies an intricacy to which I will come in a couple of minutes. Now, this is why we say that this is a case of a parliament now asserting its supremacy, that even the Prime Minister, the executive, the cabinet, the ruling party cannot tell us what to do because we are an institution in our own right. So we are not subservient to the executive. Imagine such a thing happening in India. When this happened, Boris Johnson moved another resolution or another law asking for a dissolution of the parliament and a mid-term election. Now in Britain, in India, any elected government, cabinet can pass a resolution, dissolve the house and hold a fresh election. In Britain, it's not like that. In 2011, Britain passed a law called Fixed Term Parliaments Act of 2011, whereby parliaments were guaranteed a 5-year term. To curtail that term, to hold an election earlier, a mid-term election, Parliament had to vote, and that Parliament to vote with a majority of 2/3, which means 2/3 MPs have to support a mid-term election, without which you cannot dissolve a Parliament within its term of 5 years. That is to bring political stability. So Boris Johnson moved his resolution to dissolve his Parliament and hold an early election. That got defeated also. Why did it get defeated? Because again, the same bunch of Conservative MPs, his own party's MPs, voted against the resolution. He has now, in fury, suspended those MPs. It is debatable whether he can do it. Now, three things emerge. One, I said that this shows that Parliament has expressed its supremacy. So much so that while he's expelled these MPs, 2 of his ministers have left his cabinet in protest against his forcing Parliament's hand. One of those 2 ministers is also his brother, Joe Johnson. And he's the only one we know in this entire system because he used to be the Financial Times' correspondent in India. In fact, he even got the Ramnath Goenka Journalism Award for foreign correspondence in the year when he was here, and we know him well. So he's also quit, and he said that he's leaving because he cannot find the balance, or he has to choose between family loyalties and the national interest. So this is that divided situation. In this process, he cannot hold a fresh election right now. He cannot go for no deal Brexit. He has asked for a prorogation of Parliament, which means the session is over. In India, it happens often. In the history of British Parliament, it's the first time. What this means is that Parliament is now for 5 weeks not in session. October 14, a fresh session will begin. He's getting the Queen to come and deliver a speech there. October 31 is the deadline for Brexit, and his feeling is that maybe by that time either there will be a deal or a Brexit will happen. Nobody can stop it. His opposition, on the other hand, is saying that they are not afraid of a fresh election because remember, he's now teasing his opposition by saying you guys are afraid. In fact, his line in his House of Commons was, most of the Labour people don't want an early election because terrified that they will lose. They are terrified that they will lose. And then he goes on to say, this is British Parliament. At least you can't fault them for their lack of wit. He says, and a small minority of them are terrified of an early election because they think Jeremy Corbyn might actually win. So, parliamentary wit. So, Corbyn says on the other hand that I am happy with an early election, but only if you wait for a deal at Brussels with EU until January 31, otherwise there will not be an early election. So that is where British politics is stuck right now. Generally, if I read the British press, the belief is that the street is with Boris Johnson. That a lot of the people in his base, in the conservative base, are so impatient to leave Europe that they'll go with him, and if he holds an early election, he can win. But what is the lesson we draw from this for India? And that is my final point, my third point. The lesson is that in this case, Parliament has expressed its supremacy. A political party has also asserted its own internal democracy. So among the Tories, Conservative Party, MPs have defied their own Prime Minister and their own government on a principle. Such a thing is not possible in India. Because in the British system, unlike the Indian system, a whip is not issued for everything. Although in this case, he's now, as they say, recalled the whip on these 21 MPs. But MPs vote across party lines except the exceptional cases where the party issues a whip. In India, on the other hand, the party always issues a whip, and whether you like it or not, an MP has to vote with the party. So the inner party democracy has been destroyed in India because of this, and this was done as part of the anti-defection law. Maybe the intentions were right, but there were unintended consequences. The second thing that happens is that this now becomes, instead of one dictatorship, dictatorships of many majorities within many parties, or many leaderships within many parties. So Mulayam Singh Yadav can order his MPs, you will vote this side or that side. Rahul Gandhi can order his party, vote this side or that side. In last parliament session, we saw Congress party's chief whip actually quit because he had a different view on Article 370 than his own party. So there's been a suggestion for a long time, and something that I have also written about in the past. In fact, I wrote an article in December 2015, a national interest, December 4, 2015, saying precisely this, that barring those legislations where a government stability is threatened, or barring finance bills, parties should not issue whips. They should let their MPs be independently minded members of parliament who then weigh in on different issues in terms of their own views, as happens on the Capitol Hill in the American system. That leads to a much stronger and much more vibrant democracy. And that December 2015 article was actually inspired by a speech by Hilary Benn, a senior leader of the Labour Party, who had then delivered a stirring 30-minute speech. I would suggest that you Google it. 13-minute speech making a case against his own party's position, opposing the bombing operations against ISIS in Syria. Jeremy Corbyn and Labour Party had decided to oppose it. Hilary Benn, who is a strong critic of the Tories, he stood up and made a stirring speech saying why Britain must participate in the bombing and make common cause with other socialists in Europe, including François Hollande, the president of France, and he carried the day. And that resolution was won. And how was it won? It was won narrowly, 328 to 301. It was won only because 66 Labour MPs voted across party lines. So that is what happens when you have a truly vibrant democracy. So right now, it's important to understand what's happening in Britain. One, because we need to know what Brexit is, at least a little bit. And second, it's entertaining. And third, because of the lessons it has for India's own democracy.